I tried doing this last night, but it ended up being rambly and without a point. So we'll try again. Uh, so, um, welcome everybody to Fellowship of the Ring of Protection +4 today. This is the fourth episode in the series. I have a few things to talk about. We'll kind of keep everything on the everything focused. And everything will probably more than likely be. That's my kid. She's being goof. Anyways, everything will mostly focus on TTRPGs. So I plan on staying on topic on this one. I got really rambly and all that last night. So we're going to actually do a focused video. So I see I got a viewer. Hello, welcome. So hopefully we'll stay on topic this time. But there's a couple things I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to try to make sure it stays on games. Let me find the post, actually. It's in a Basic Fantasy RPG Facebook group. So let's see here. Because, alright, so I want to preface this by saying I know that we have a lot of people that are coming over from 5e. I know that a lot of these people came over just simply because they wanted to stick it to Wizards, given the OGL stuff. I understand that. Greetings, Rex. Hey, Fred. So, and I'm not opposed to bringing 5e style philosophy to the game. It's your game. I don't care. But kind of defeats the purpose when the game is supposed to be based off of Moldvay, right? Let me find it. And this is kind of a clue in. There it is. Rules for Mind Flayer PC. These are some of the worst I've ever seen. This is like one of the most worst ideas in a long line of bad ideas I could see to throw in this game. So we're going to try not to attack this individual. Obviously, a lot of people have get up. What's up, dude? Hey, Steve. So obviously, some people have chimed in already on this. So Mind Flayers is PCs. So Adam says, unless you're doing a BFRPG variation of on Reverse Dungeon, I say it's a bit too powerful for standard PCs. I suppose if you strip them down to, it's a guy who has tentacles on his face and he likes to eat brains of his dead foes, and just use elf for the stats, that's maybe okay, question mark. But with the psionic blast, I wouldn't do it as a standard PC. List the monster's abilities. Spec says list monster's abilities in order from weakest to strongest, assigning levels to them as they were spells or such. The creature starts with 1 HD. As it gains levels, it gains abilities. XP requirements for level gain should be scaled to account for the creature's power. And then, of course, you have guys like me who are just saying, no, bad idea. No, don't do it. Which I didn't comment on this, but if you want my opinion, yeah, bad idea. Somebody said, why didn't you just use a zombie? I mean, that's a fair point. Eric says, just off the top of my head, I think I would just take the Thulid, which is in the field guide, by the way, and limit it to magic user, where the Mind Blast takes up a spell slot to use. Limit the Mind Blast to stun until 5th level. Then allow it to damage, similar to Fireball, so 1d6 per level. Then at 11th level, same as Disintegrate, allow the Mind Blast to kill. So there you go. Somebody's trying to balance it. Chris Gonerman has weighed in. He says there are no Mind Flayers in BFRPG and will not be. We have Thulids in the field guide, but I would not expect them to be good PCs. Not as in morally good, but as in acceptable in the game. How can you have a PC who literally wants to eat all the other PC's brains? There you go. Because there we have the problem. Wesley says maybe the PC has a strange allergy brain, so they only devour citrus fruit. And Kyle says that kind of spoils the fun, and I agree. Like if you're going to play this Mind Flayer type PC, why in the world would you make it vegan? Like that just. And then of course, Jacob had asked, hold on, bro, I'm not trying to be pedantic, but aren't Mind Flayers and Illithid and Thulids the same thing? I accidentally clicked off of that, so let me go back up. Oh, never mind. He said MFs and Illithids the same thing. Martin says Illithids and Mind Flayers are the same, but they aren't part of BFRPG. We have Thulids. Oh, do they have a Sonic Blast? They are exactly the same. As Joseph says, they are exactly the same, but that monster is the intellectual property of another company who bought the rights to them. To get around this, changing the name is all that is required. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Jacob then says, how does one copyright that but not copyright Orc? Joseph says, I'm not kidding. Orcs have been a thing since Norse mythology. This is true. Same with goblins, elves, fairies, and all the commonly used monsters. All from folklore and safe to legally use. TSR created Mind Flayers, Beholders, and others. And right, we get into the legalese. So Jacob is honestly just kind of wanting to fight for the sake of fighting. So anyways, to get to the point. Now, when it comes to running monsters, and I'm going to go ahead and get back on, because I see that I had a comment on the live chat that I did not catch in time before it disappeared as I was looking at the screen. So, let me get back. That is the wrong one. Oops. Okay, that's the Religious Rex channel. Let me switch over to Kentucky Rex on that. Okay. Your channel. All right, let's see here. I know I'm live. Let's go to it. Okay, so let's weigh in on the chats we got going on here. That's everything. Okay, Steve says this guy sounds like he would be better off playing 5e where evil doesn't seem to matter or exist. Yeah, this is kind of what I said. I don't like to be that guy, but if you're looking for all these options and stuff like that, there's other games that are tailor made to that. It's the same reason why I think people who want a story and want a story focused game shouldn't even play D&D. They should go look for something because there's better things out there that does what they're looking for. So let's talk about monsters as PCs real quick. I don't allow them. The closest thing I do is in the Morgansport campaign, in the play by post, and in the live one. We in both groups there are players that play half orcs. We also have a player in the play by post that plays a fawn druid. I can overlook a lot of that and whatnot because whatever. Be that as it may, like you have to kind of ask why in the world would you want to play a monster to begin with? If it's just because if you're doing it for mechanics, well then you're just better off playing a better game for that. So, in my opinion, one of the worst things that ever happened to D&D was allowing monsters as player character options. Like the Tiefling is a good example. Oh my lord, I can't stand the Tiefling. What a stupid idea to allow players to play. But be that as it may, this is why I'm a big believer in less is more. Realize what you want in your campaign, what fits with your campaign, and limit the player character options as such. For example, I decided whenever I get Anglovin off the ground, the players are going to still have the 4 core rules, but I'm using the archetype supplements that are found on Basic Fantasy's website, because I found that the archetypes would cover what the players are looking for. So the way that they're going to do is and I'm going to actually talk about this here in a little bit. They're going to roll 3d6 down the line. Whatever they get is whatever they get, and they can choose an archetype based upon what stats they have. Now, obviously, I'm going to try to mercy roll some things. Like, I think I've had one instance in which a character had something totally unusable. That was with the Mortal Coil campaign, when the guy who currently plays Gwydion, the magic user, he was trying to roll up a character. He ended up having something that was totally not usable, like literally 5s, 6s, and 7s, and that makes for nothing. So he's like, "Can I re-roll?" I'm like, "Yeah." Now, there are rules in Basic Fantasy RPG for how to handle that, but at that point, I just think it's just better off to roll. Just go ahead and roll a new one. So, monsters for player character classes, I'm not a big fan of. That being said, your campaign is your campaign, but I want my orcs to be evil, and I don't allow evil characters. Now, I've gone back and forth on this whole alignment thing, where I try to use 3 points, but we will use the 9 point to kind of flesh out nuances, if you get what I mean. Like Carphenek's player, he describes Sogor, his dwarven god, as neutral good, I'm pretty sure. And that makes for that kind of gives me a nuance on what I should expect whenever I'm dealing with when I'm trying to role play, in a way, his god trying to communicate with him. Now, I don't go into this whole, "You must do this." I don't do that. Like, when I say role play, that's actually not really the right word to use. Like, I kind of say, like, it was revealed to you in a dream during the night that Sogor wants you to do this for this specific reason. And there you go. It also depends on the monster too. Like, obviously, because now you're begging the question now. Okay, if you're going to play a Mind Flayer, why not play a dragon? If you're going to play a Mind Flayer, why not a Beholder? Why is this allowed but not that? Humanoid? Well, technically, Illithids, or in Basic Fantasy's case, Thulids, are not technically humanoid. They're more like aberrations. So, if you get what I mean, like, at this juncture, what makes this allowed but not that? And that's where things can get off the rails. Now, like somebody said, if you're doing like a reverse dungeons thing, where like you're going to be the monsters guarding the dungeon against adventurers, okay, that makes sense. That'd be fun. That sounds like that sounds like that would be a nice little romp, if at least a one shot. You know what I mean? Put things on put the shoes on the other feet and see what happens. That'd be interesting. But aside from that, I don't see how in the world you can make a monster like that work. Because, I mean, even, let's take the mechanics out now. Even from a roleplay perspective, right? Because if you're going to have a Mind Flayer in a party of mostly humans or elves or dwarves or whatever, they're going to eventually have to go to town to restock on things. So now you have to provide a convincing disguise for this thing that has feelers all over its face. And this Grognard needs his beauty sleep. Be well, Rex. Hey, see you, Steve. Sorry I didn't start earlier, my brother. I'll hopefully this will be up for you to watch and recap tomorrow. Okay. Anyways, so now you also have to figure out some way to keep this guy's appetite in check, because I know this dude wants to like try to play a vegan one, and that makes me roll my eyes. Um, my answer would be no, because that's not what they're going to be. Like if mind flayers are even a thing in your world, then they have to mean something. They have to. There's a reason that they have to exist, and in this case, like they're normally subterranean aliens that crack people's skulls open and feed on their brains, and they're parasitic. So like they plant larvae in people's ears and make more lithids. So I mean, it makes no sense why do this, and it's the same with an orc. Like why? Because this all comes down to why allow orcs, why allow gnolls, why allow kobolds and stuff like that. Because it's frankly strange, and it doesn't. It's very hard, if not impossible, to make fit with a setting. Um, I realize that most of these modules that Wizards of the Coast release are these free for all railroads where anything goes, and really the game is nothing but furry degeneracy, just dressed up in fantasy garb. But people who actually care about their settings will limit their players to their choices for what will fit with the campaign. So, take for example B2, Keep on the Borderlands. The only ones that I would ever allow being ran would be human, dwarf, halfling, and elf. I probably would allow certain half humans to a degree, but be that as it may, that all comes down to how deep the players want to go into it. Like, why do half orcs exist? Why do half elves exist? And that can be a little creepy and weird. So, even then, I'd be kind of fey creatures like fairies uh, and fallen satyrs and stuff like that. Um, that depends on a lot of things. Like, if B2 is going to take place on Mystara, well, how high magic is your version of Mystara? If this is going to take place in your world, because that was the whole point of modules, they were modular. You could shove them into a world and do whatever you wanted with them. So that all comes down to high magic or not. If you're going to have high magic, then yeah, probably not out of the not totally out of thin air to maybe assume that fey creatures become adventurers. If you're running like low magic or grimdark or a certain brand of grimdark, I should say, um, do fey creatures even exist? So that all comes down to you. Uh, what else? Oh yeah, something else I was going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about 3d6. I've always wanted to talk about 3d6. Because especially in modern editions, the common way of rolling attributes is 4d6, drop the lowest, and you can allot them however you want. I'm not like that. In most campaigns that I run, your first character is 3d6 straight down the line. Your second character, if the first one dies, then you can allot the stats however you want, but it's still 3d6. But I'm going to make a case for why 3d6 straight down the line, in my opinion, should always be the norm. Number one, 3d6 kind of makes everything more believable, more it makes things more immersive. If characters are good at one or two things but bad in one or two things, the only people that really seem to have a problem with that idea are people who want to come to games that want to min max and build because they think they're going to make a broken character, which in my settings you're not going to have. Sorry, your 5e rogue is not going to fit in with my multi basic thief mechanics. That's just a simple matter of fact. But it makes sense to have average skills and be good at some things and absolutely terrible at others. Whereas in with a 4d6 straight down the line, you're now putting on the player the possibility of gaining like superpowery kind of things. Like, okay, I'm going to take somebody as an example real quick. So, I'm going to show you my character. The guy who plays Carfanek, he runs us through a Mincer Basic game. He ran us through one last Sunday, and we're currently trying to get the schedule figured out. We were going to play Morgansport tonight, but our Magic user was out sick. I reckon he's doing terrible, which get well soon, Zach. So, we are going to... I'm going to show you my character. This is Renault. This is Renault Varon. Everything I need is on this tiny little index card. So to give you an idea of his stats, he rolled, in my opinion, pretty good. Somebody's cranky. So we have strength is a 16 plus 2. Intelligence is a 12, so average. Wisdom is a 13 plus 1, so above average. Dexterity is an 11, so average. Constitution is a 12, average. And Charisma is a 16 plus 2. These were 3d6 straight down the line. There was no allotment. We were given that option, and I thought about it, but I decided that Wisdom and Charisma, having a +1 in Wisdom and a +2 in Charisma, in addition to having a +2 in Strength, made for a fairly interesting character that I could play with. So we were started off at level 2. We're using a 3-point morality system, so he's lawful. He took some damage in the last campaign, or the last session, so he took 2 damage, so he's got 11 hit points right now. He has a maximum hit points of 13. His armor class, and by the way, we are running Mincer Basic, so Thaco. So his AC is a 5 with his armor only, his chainmail, and it's a 4 if you include the shield. Currently, he has 999 gold pieces and 4 silver pieces. We have his resistances is 12 versus poison, 13 versus magic wands, 14 versus petrification and paralysis, 15 against dragon breath, and 16 against spells. His equipment, he's got a normal sword, does d8 damage, a short bow, does d6 damage, quiver with 20 arrows, he hasn't shot any of them yet, shield, chainmail, backpack that can hold 400 gold coins, or coins really, 6 torches, 1 tinderbox, 2 large sacks, a 10-foot wooden pole, a water skin, some jewels, because Brian wanted us to have some way to have money, but not take up too much inventory space, since we were mostly buying equipment and gear for adventuring. And so obviously when you start off with 1,000 gold pieces, because level 2, so we had some experience that we'd be okay. Oh, and he has a squid mask, because we're doing like this masquerade kind of party thing right now, and like the party has been attacked by hobgoblins, and the masquerade party is in chaos right now because of like an elixir that was planted in the wine, and basically anybody who's wearing a particular mask kind of takes on the personality of whatever that mask is. Like there's one guy there, an NPC that's dressed up like a rogue, so he acts like a burglar. There's a woman there that has a were-rat looking mask, so she acts like a rat and she tries to claw at people. We did not drink the wine because we uncovered the conspiracy through finding the hobgoblins on the previous night, and Renault actually wrestled one to the ground. We interrogated him. He talked about the elixir and this, that, and everything else. He didn't say much else, so we just. And now we're in chaos, and we're trying to protect the Duchess and all that from the hobgoblin attack, and we've kind of boarded ourselves up in her bedroom while we tried to make a plan of escape or fighting. So Brian also gave us options for professional skill, like what were you before an adventure? Privateer for Renault, because I thought that was interesting. I have weapon mastery, normal sword, short bow, mace, and a dagger. Even though I don't have a mace, I do have a dagger, I do have a normal sword, and I have a short bow. When I went to that masquerade ball, because there's no weapons allowed, I didn't take, and because I didn't want to stick out by wearing my chainmail, I decided I was going to smuggle in a dagger, appendix carry style, right up front of my pants with my shirt pulled over it, and I took that in with us. So when things went down, I at least had something to protect myself with. The elf and the thief ended up bringing like these really large overcoats and hid their weaponry underneath them. But Renault smuggled in a dagger in his pants, and it worked out. So, general skill leadership actually started with a retainer. His name is Hothfinkel, and he's kind of like he's kind of like a cleric. He's like a holy man. Origins, I think he's Thaiasian, so he's more darker complected than everybody else. He's got darker skin. Him and Hothfinkel both. In fact, if you are somebody with pale skin in this setting, you kind of stick out. So. And of course, because of his strength being 16, he gets plus 10% to experience bonuses. And of course, he speaks with a Thaiasian dialect, whatever that happens to be. But, Thaiasian dialect. So anyways, off of this tiny little index card, this is all I really needed to flesh out a fairly interesting character. He's not a superhero. He's just a normal guy. That's all you really needed. Now, if he had like 18 strength and he's got a bonus in wisdom, we'll say like he had like 16 wisdom and then 18 charisma. So he'd be weird and super powered and this is a min-max and this, that, and everything else. And I find, and something that Chris Garnerman actually brings up in the core rules, is that most people treat charisma as a dump stat. Okay, so as you can see, there you go. So excuse my handwriting. Charisma, like I said, 3d6 straight down the line. I didn't mess with anything. So charisma +2. Most people treat charisma as a dump stat, and that's very unfortunate. Because, excuse me, most of you guys have probably seen by now my videos on reaction rolls and morale and things like that. You would be very surprised at how what could have been a hack and slash encounter turns into a diplomatic interaction. It's very unfortunate because that's something that's lost in modern gaming, because everybody's going to, okay, so if I had my way, because this guy is a fighter, he's a level 2 fighter. If I had my way and I was going to min-max, obviously I would take out of that charisma and I would stick that 16 into charisma, and then I'd take that wisdom, that +1 wisdom, and put it into dexterity for +1. Not only to help my armor class, but to help my ranged attacks, and then keep my strength where it is. If I was going to min-max, if I was going to allot my stats. But that's boring. That is uninteresting. So that's something that's lost on a lot of people, is they think that they have to build the perfect stat blocks to make a character really good, and that's not the case. So because Renault has +1 wisdom, I kind of play him as a guy who thinks a little bit more, not necessarily like a scientist, but more like a philosopher, or using street smarts, common sense. Like when everybody started going mad because of the wine drinking, he's like, methinks this is because of the elixir that the goblins smuggled in last night. And then because the captain of the guard is, we don't know where he is. He disappeared. And we don't know what he's doing, where he is. Hypotheses, logical reasoning, would probably state that he's probably helping the Hobbs. So that's my personal belief. 3d6 down the line, guys. It's like, it's so surprising to me how modern gamers will kick back at something like this. No, it has to be perfect, this, that, and everything else, because they want to Mary Sue self-insert. They want a Mary Sue self-insert character. They want to put themselves in the shoes. And so, of course, if there's a possibility of failure, then that sticks in their craw. Number one, you're not your character. You're putting on, when it comes to role-playing, consider this, you're putting on a costume. This is not the real you. This is you pretending to be somebody else. You are taking on another life for a few hours, pretending to be somebody else who's never existed, or maybe they have existed. Maybe you're running like a historical medieval style campaign or something like that, or a Wild West one. But be that as it may, you are playing somebody that you are not, and you are putting yourself in somebody else's skin. You can literally be whatever you want within reason of whatever the campaign setting allows. And so, for example, 16 strength. No. Like, whatever muscle I have is from turning wrenches at the plant, where I'm a factory mechanic. So, no. Wisdom, that's in the eye of the beholder, right? So, if I was to say that I was like really wise, well, that just makes me sound conceited and full of myself. So, and charisma, not exactly the most eloquent talker, nor am I the most likable guy on the planet. The fact that I even have 121 subscribers right now is surprising to me. But be that as it may, and the funny part is I kind of embrace that too. Like, if I wanted to, I could get my subscribers to. I would bet that most of my subscribers would stay, but a certain amount of them would leave because my views, my worldviews, my politics, and everything don't ally 110% with everybody. But I like to think that most people that subscribe to me are rational people who are, they're here to have fun and, talk about games and stuff like that. So that's just kind of what I've assumed. But there you go. There's 3d6 in a nutshell. I don't really have much else to talk about. Like, it's something I don't think gets talked about a whole lot. But 3d6 in a nutshell. Like, here's why, and here's how it's interesting, and it's more interesting than 4d6 drop the lowest. Like, that was, in my opinion, one of the worst things to have happened in gaming when we started doing that. So I don't do it. I've also seen people do 2d6 plus 6, and that's terrible. Like, at that point, yeah, but unless you were wanting to run a superhero powered campaign, okay, fine, whatever. But so we'll talk about some more stuff before I'm finished. Let's see what's going on in the Christian D&D group, right? So let's look up what's going on in the Christian D&D group right now. Let's see what everybody's up to. Okay. Christian D&D group. Okay. GMs when they wake up and where all the prep time went, and that you got this character that's all like wide eyed and stuff like that. Not a problem for me. To be honest with you, you're just running a game. You're not writing a novel. Um, the dice should tell the story more than you. I understand wanting to put in some narrative. That's fine. Let that come up through organic gameplay. If you do have a really good idea, go ahead and just put the basic fundamentals. You don't need a whole lot to have an interesting quest. So not a problem. It's really not. Uh, this guy that I'm going to reply to. Okay. So they added a new moderator to their admin team. Good for them. Some guy talking about miniatures, which I don't run. I wish I could, but I very much do theater of the mind. I just simply don't have the room, nor the money, nor the resources for it. Maybe one of these days. I would love to have like a Blackmore style big giant map table with like figurines and people just kind of come in, do some things with their characters real quick for their world and then leave. I would love to do that, but okay. So here's a little bit of encouragement for the day in a meme. The do what makes you happy culture is so toxic for Christians. We are not called to do what makes us happy. We're called to do what glorifies God. Christianity isn't always sunshine and happiness. It's hard work and dedication to Him, not us. Do what glorifies God. And amen to that. I agree with that. Okay. Somebody's talking about how they'd like to see some D&D groups come alive from this group. Yeah, but most people in my experience with this group seem only interested in 5e. So, in my opinion, until you actually get people away from something like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and actually get them into something, even like doesn't have to be OSR, but just something like Call of Cthulhu or whatever, you're not going to see a lot of, because there's oversaturation for the D&D market right now, especially 5e. Okay, here's a good one. If you're ever worried the names in your D&D game are too on the nose, remember that the Rocky Mountains are a real thing. Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. English is a very simple language when we really think about it. We don't have the kind of nuances that say Koine Greek have. There's actually a little humorous anecdote that there's 100 different ways to say that John loves Jesus in Koine Greek, but would only be really one way in a literal sense for English speakers, right? So, anyways, because English is very simple when we really think about it, although there are nuances and complexities to it that we have that others do not. But be that as it may, a lot of the strength for our language comes from the fact that most names are, whether that's places, whether that's noun or verb or whatever, most of our words in our dialect and dictionaries are somewhere between 2 to 3 syllables. Keep that in mind when you name things, whether that's characters, places, or whatever, monsters, whatever. For example, Anglovan, very simple name that I named for my campaign. Anglo coming from, you know, England, Anglo, like Anglican, and or the Anglo Saxons. And Van, because I thought it was a nice suffix to add at the end, Anglo Van. So, um, and I named other places like Farn, Corid, Thessia, things like that. Like 2 to 3 syllables. Simplicity is key, and you can actually get by with a lot by simply respelling certain things. Like one of the characters I put as in terms of mythology within my game was a cleric, a religious figure in history named Thomas Derry. That's spelled Thomesdery. So Thomas Derry, and it had a nice little kind of sounded like a little bit of Gaelic to it, and it's based off of English transliterations of the Thomas name. Um, so you get by with very little when you really think about it. So simplicity is key. Try to name your places or persons with 2 syllables, 2 or 3. Um, you can get by with one. I named Farn for example, Fairn. All it is Farn because I thought it sounded nice, and it honestly had kind of like a Gaelic kind of look to it too. And you can, if you're feeling brave, go for 4, but I would recommend not going past that. Um, so like even like probably the only 4 syllable word that I can think of in Anglovan is Donathan's Keep, which is the place of a baron. So in the game, so simplicity is key, guys. And like let's just take a mountain. Okay, what's your mountains about? Okay, are they hot or are they cold? We'll say that they're cold. Okay, so are they, like, how hostile are they? Are they civilized? Are there people living up in there, or is it like this frontier place, or is it kind of a mixture of both? Well, we'll say that it's kind of a mixture of both. You have people that live up there, but it is pretty hostile. Okay, so it's a pretty hostile place. So what would be something that's hostile? Well, and it has to do with cold. Uh, Obviously, something like Frostbite Mountain would be okay. Bitter cold hills, or bitter cold rock, or something like that. Like just brainstorm. Like you don't have to come up with these big elaborate names. Simplicity, just as a tip. You know what I mean? Um, Okay, so here's one more before I get off. Me, the GM, spends a few hours preparing traps and keep it secret from the players. Players, hey, so I have this skill called Detect Traps. Does that work here? Me, hours of preparation wasted. Well, I'm going to tell you right now. It's something that you ought to prepare for. Um, Now, a skill. Now, in older games like Basic, um, everybody had this ability. It's just that, excuse me, thieves had a specific percentile of success, whereas everybody else typically had to roll a 1. And it depended on how easy the trap was to find and trigger and this, that, and everything else. Um, the thief had to roll a percentile for finding it and then disabling it. So, looking for traps, that everybody has that ability, and you don't even have to necessarily roll. A 10-foot pole will get you where you need. 10-foot pole will find a lot of things very easy. 10-foot pole will trigger some traps sometimes, but people always have that, and some people simply opt to like get down on their hands and knees and feel things out. and spend time doing that, and that's fine too. So you don't necessarily have to roll for it. So um really, and in my opinion, if you I know they're doing it for humor, but if you take this viewpoint of, oh no, they found the traps. Like it's funny to me because I try not to be that adversarial GM. Like I like to high five my players when they do something cool or find something or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I understand that certain settings and certain modules take a more adversarial position for the game master, and that's totally fine. But Gary was one of them, by the way. Tomb of Horrors was a very infamous one for that. But anyways, um, I think if you, I know they're more likely doing this for humor, but there are people out there that do think like this, and that's a terrible way to approach the game. You're there to have fun, and so are your players. And if they find the trap, great. If they don't, oh well, is what it is. Like they trigger it, and then something happens, and one of them might die. They all might die. Rocks Fall, Everyone Dies is a trap that has not appeared in quite some time, but it does exist, especially in these retro clones and older editions. So, like, it's not terrible. Uh, so chill out. Just become, and I know that 5e like leaves almost no interpretation up to the GM, and I have a big problem with that. But generally, when I make a rule based on the vagaries of the wording of rules, I normally opt for game balance at that point. Like, okay, is this easy? How easy or hard is this for a character to find? Because this A depends on the trap, B depends on the dungeon, C depends on the positioning of the trap within this dungeon. So if I'm running something that's more meant for lower level characters, it'll be generally more easier to a degree. You will have the more difficult to find traps, but the players will, especially if they're new, will start to learn and kind of hang on and realize what this is about and that's about and this, that, and everything else, so that when they get either really deep into this dungeon or go to another area that's much more deadlier, then they have that experience to go off of. But that's me. So I believe I'm done on that, and I think I might be done in general. So here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to close this out. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in, and I want to thank everybody who's going to tune in the future. Again, thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for the views. Thank you for the encouragement and the support. If you're interested in my religious views, I have the Religious Rex channel up. If this one's going to be mostly about gameplay, but I am going to talk about my personal beliefs on this channel. I don't shy away from that. If you have the time and if you have the money, I still want to plug St. Jude's Children's Hospital. If you can have the time, and if you have the money, it's not going to starve you out, to please donate to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It's a charity I do care about. I still plan on doing some kind of 24-hour stream for that. I was going to originally do Bloodborne, but then I thought about it and I was like, I kind of want to make it more kid friendly. So I'm going to stream something. Don't know yet, but I'm going to try my best to figure out what I'm going to put up. All right, so I guess that's been this iteration of Fellowship of the Ring of Protection. I'm going to figure out some more topics to discuss in the future, but thank you for my viewers. Thank you for everybody that's tuned in tonight, that's going to tune in the future. Hopefully this will be formatted up on the channel in public view tomorrow or the next day. We'll see. But as always, guys, take care. God bless. See you on the other side.